We continue now at the top of Daf Chavav Amud Aleph and Meseches Yoma. This is Yoma Daf 26a. The Gemara asks, Lamai also, what is the word peder, which means the fats? Why is that written in the pasuk? Rashi here explains the question. Lamai also ha'afheim b'chlal hanesachim. The peder is just one part of the many parts of the animal that are cut up and offered on the mizbeach. Why does it have to be specified? The reason why I need to identify rosh, that's already explained in Shchitas Chulin, because it says that you're going to skin the animal and arrange everything. So I only know that you arrange the parts of the animal that were part of the skinning process and the cutting process when you're taking apart the limbs of the animal. How do you know to include also the rosh? That was already cut off when you slaughtered the animal. So maybe the rosh is not included in the offering process and the arranging process. That wasn't part of the hefshet of the animal, because again, you already cut off the head when you slaughtered the animal. So Talmud Lomer es harosh, that's why it says es harosh. So we understand why it identifies the rosh specifically. But peder, that's all part of everything when it comes to skinning and taking apart the animal. So why do you have to write that word for? So the Gemara answers l'chiretanya. We write that for the following brisa, the halacha that's in the following brisa. What would the Kohen do? He would take the peder and he would use it to cover up the area where the animal was slaughtered, the neck, meaning on the rosh. When you offer the rosh, you would cover up that area. That's how you would offer the rosh. This was a respectful way to do the offering. Rashi says, the area where you did the shchita, it's filled with blood from the rosh, and therefore you want to cover up the blood. It's not nice. So that's what you would do. You cover it up. That's why it says pader, to say that this is the proper way, the derech kavod to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to offer the rosh on the mizbeach. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Hapayis Hashlishi, the third lottery, Chadoshim Leketoras Bova Hafi. So they would announce, anyone who's never done the Ketoras before, come and draw lots. Rashi over here says, Chadoshim Leketoras, Mishalo Zocha Leketoras Miyamav. Anyone who's never done the Ketoras, with Gemara Mefarish Maishana Chadoshim, the Gemara will explain why they only did it with the Chadoshim. This was an announcement they made in the Azara. And when it came to the fourth lottery, Chadoshim Im Yeshanim, the new people with the old people. Mimala Evarim min hakevesh lemizbeach. They would determine who's going to bring the limbs from the ramp to the mizbeach. And the Gemara says, Tana, it was taught, Me'olam lo shana adam ba. Nobody ever got to do the ketoras twice. My time, and what's the reason? Amar Rabbi Chanina says, Mipnei shema'asheres, because it makes somebody wealthy. Rashi says, Lafikach lo hayom so l'shanos. They never let anyone do it twice, because it gave this special bracha. Amar Rav Papa li Abaye. Rav Papa said to Abaye, my time, and what's the reason? What's the source for this? Ilema mishum dechsiv. If you're going to say, because the pasuk says, Yasimu ketorah be'apecha, pasuk mentions ketores. Uchsiv basrei. Right after that, it says, Barech Hashem chelo. Talks about the fact that you're going to be blessed. You'll be blessed with this wealth. So if so, Ola Nami, anyone who brings the carbon Ola as well, Haksiv v'cholel al mizbechecha, it mentions the Ola v'cholel al mizbechecha, that which is totally consumed on your mizbeach, it mentions that in the pasuk as well. So Amar Lei, so he said to him, Ha-shchicha v'halo shchicha. The carbon Ola is common, the ketoris is not common. It makes sense to say that if it brings wealth, it's something that's not so common, because wealthy people are not so common. The Gemara says, Amar Rava says, Lo mashkachas tzor b'mei rabbanan demori, ela do'asi mishevet Levi or mishevet Yisachar. Says, we don't find any Talmud Chacham who is able to paskin halacha unless the person comes from Shevet Levi or Shevet Yisachar. Levi dechsiv, how do we know Levi? Like it says in the pasuk, Yoru mishpatecha liYakov. It says in reference to Levi, the tribe of Levi, that they teach the laws. Yisachar dechsiv, how do we know Yisachar? Because the pasuk says, Ubnei Yisachar yodei bina la'itim ladas mayasa Yisrael. Again, talks about the fact that Yisachar has understanding. Gemara says, Ve'ema Yehuda nami. We should say also the tribe of Yehuda. Dechsiv, because the pasuk says, Yehuda mechokake, talking about the laws that they're carving out. So the Gemara says, Asuke shmaita liba dehilchasa ka'amina. When we talk about teaching, we mean to say people who are able to understand the sugya according to the halacha. Rashi says, Aliba dehilchasa lahoros kedos ukahalacha. To be able to teach what the law is, what the halacha is, that's a higher level. That's why we're not mentioning Yehuda. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Ein mefaisen al tamid shel ben ha'arbaim. They didn't draw lots when it came to the carbon tamid of the afternoon. El kohen shezocha bo shachar is zocha bo arvis. The same kohen who did the morning carbon tamid would do the evening carbon tamid. The Gemara says, Meisvei, we have a question from the following. Keshem shemefaisen shachar is kach mefaisen ben ha'arbaim. It says in the brisa, just like they did a lottery in the morning, they did it in the afternoon as well. So the Gemara says, Kitanya hi beketores. That brisa is not talking about the carbon tamid, it's talking about the ketores. For that, they did 2 lotteries, one in the morning, one at night. Gemara says, what do you mean, Vatanya? But we learned in a brisa, Keshem shemefaisin lo shacharis, kach mefaisin lo arvis. It uses the masculine word lo, and therefore it should not be referring to the ketores, it should be referring to the carbon tamid. Gemara says, Amo law, just change it from the word lo to the word law in the feminine, and therefore again, that brisa is referring to the ketores, not the carbon tamid. Gemara says, Vatani, but we have another brisa which says, Keshem shemefaisin lo shacharis, kach mefaisin lo arvis, ucheshem shemefaisin lo shacharis, kach mefaisin lo arvis. Just like they did a lottery for it in the morning, they did it in the evening. And then again, just like they did it for it in the morning, they did it in the evening. But again, here, it uses both lo and lo. So clearly the brisa is referring to both the carbon tamid and the ketores. So the Gemara says, Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak answers, Hach, over here in this brisa, where it says you did a lottery in the afternoon for both the carbon tamid and for the ketores, b'Shabbos askinan. That's talking about on Shabbos, Hoelu mishmaros mischachos, because on Shabbos, that's when the shifts would actually change. One mishmar would stop doing the work, and a new mishmar of Kohanim would come in. So then it was necessary to have a new lottery completely in the afternoon for the new group of Kohanim. Gemara says, now according to our original thought, where we thought that again, every afternoon, not only on Shabbos, but every afternoon we're going to do a new lot for the carbon tamid. So nefishilu paisos, aren't you going to have too many lotteries? We said before, you just have 4 drawings. And so the Gemara answers, even according to our original thought that they would have a lottery for the carbon tamid in the afternoon, maisi kulu mitzafra asu, all the Kohanim would come in the morning, the zachi be'shachar zachi, some would win the merit to do the carbon tamid of the shacharis, and the zachi and then some would win to do it in the afternoon. But in other words, they wouldn't convene again in the afternoon. Even what we originally thought, they did all of these lotteries in the morning. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots, quoting the Mishnah, Haravi, when it came to the 4th lottery, Chadoshim im Yeshanim v'chulu, it was new people with old people. And the Mishnah had said over here, Mimala evarim min hakevesh lemizbeach. That last lottery was to determine who brings the limbs from the ramp to the mizbeach. And so the Gemara here points out, Masnisin delok Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Our Mishnah does not follow Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Hamala evarim lekevesh, the person who brings the limbs to the ramp, hu mala osan lemizbech. It's the same Kohen who's then going to bring them from the ramp up to the mizbech. In other words, according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, there was not an additional lottery to figure out who brought the limbs from the ramp up to the mizbech. It was the same person. You brought it to the ramp first, you set it down, then it was brought from the ramp up to the mizbeach. Gemara says, "B'mai kamiflagi." What's the machlokas about? What does it revolve around? Mar savar berovam hadras melech. Our Mishnah holds it's better to have more kohanim involved. That's a greater glory for the king. Umar savar, the other one holds makam shchina lav orachara. It's not proper derech eretz when the shchina is there to make it look like it's too much of a burden. You don't want to do all the work of bringing it up the ramp. We want the same person who brings it to the ramp should bring it up the mizbeach. The Gemara now says, Amar Rava, Rava says, Lo Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov islay de Rabbi Yehuda, v'lo Rabbi Yehuda islay de Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov does not agree with Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda does not agree with Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Rashi here says, Lo Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov islay de Rabbi Yehuda, damar lo haya payas lamachte. Rabbi Yehuda says there was no separate lottery. We said this before. There was no separate lottery for the person who brought the pan when it came to the bringing of the ketores. V'nosin Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov payas lamachte, tachas payas min hakevesh u'lemizbeach. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov said there was a payas for the machta instead of the payas from the ramp to the mizbeach. In other words, everyone agrees there are 4 paisos. Everyone agrees there are 4 lotteries. According to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, you take off the one from the ramp to the mizbeach and you replace it with the payas for the machta. Rabbi Yehuda says the exact opposite. There's no payas for the machta. Instead, you have the payas from the kevesh to the mizbeach. That's what the Gemara here means. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov doesn't hold of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Diim kain batzru lu paisos, because if they did hold of each other, then there's not going to be enough. It means you're going to subtract 2 paisos. That means there's going to be somebody that holds. There's only 3 paisos. And the Gemara says further, v'mashkachas tana de tani chamish. If you find any tana that has 5 lotteries, we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chavav Amud Beis.